Hi, it's Kim, and I'm back for another week of 10-minute tips for your relationships. 10 minutes. So, this week, I want to talk about toxic relationships and what that looks like. We've talked about what a good relationship or healthy relationships look like in a marriage, in a relationship. And I wanted to follow that up with this episode of what does a toxic relationship look like? What does that mean? Because sometimes we're in toxic relationships and we don't even know we're in one. So today I'm going to just share a few characteristics of a toxic relationship or a person who's toxic in your relationship. So, healthy relationships, what do they look like? Yeah, we've discussed this before. So, healthy relationships have what? Trust. We should be able to trust our partner. Gratitude. Yes, we should feel appreciated in our relationships. And then romance, of course, the intimacy, and you should have a satisfying love life. Selflessness. Yes, I should be concerned about my partner, and my partner should be concerned about me at all times. And we should be trying to do the things that help each other in the relationship. So, these are some things that healthy relationships look like. Yes, they look like we're engaged in conversation, we don't avoid conflict. Um, we're just doing everything that we can to make this relationship work. Yes, because we know that relationships take work. But what does a toxic relationship look like? Well, probably just the opposite. So we know that healthy relationships do what? They help build self esteem. Yes, they help build you up. They help with the emotional energy of the relationship. That's always positive. I mean, even when we're having an argument or we're not necessarily agreeing, our energy is always positive, even sometimes in a negative situation. But what does a toxic relationship do? Yeah, it probably diminishes the self esteem of the partner who's the victim in the situation, if you will. And it also produces a lot of negative energy in the relationship. So, a healthy relationship does what? It produces mutual caring. You have a loving, nurturing relationship. There's a lot of respect in that relationship. I mean, compassion, all those things. We're interested in the welfare and the growth of our partner, opposed to being in a toxic relationship where none of those things exist. It's typically about that person, their needs being met. It's not very loving or caring, a lot of emotional and maybe some verbal abuse. So let's take a look at these things. A toxic relationship is not a safe place. It's a place of a lot of insecurity, control, dominance, and self centeredness. To say that a toxic relationship is just like being in a dysfunctional relationship is really an understatement. Yeah. Because I mean, you think about a dysfunctional relationship, it's not the best relationship to be in. Basically, it's a relationship that's not functioning properly or normally. But we could fix that. Sometimes dysfunctional relationships go a lot deeper. That's a whole nother level. Just think about the word toxic. What does that word mean? It means poisonous or harmful, even deadly. So, toxic relationships take relationships to a whole nother level. So, let's take a look at some of these toxic relationships or the characteristics of. The first thing I want to look at is Gaslighting. Yeah, we hear that term thrown around quite a bit here lately, gaslighting. But that actual term actually comes from a 1944 movie called Gaslight. In this movie, the husband did all kinds of little things to basically drive his wife insane, make her think she's crazy. He really worked on her self esteem and her self assurance. She was not assured in her own ability to make decisions for herself. And the husband was doing this while tampering with the gas lights in the home. So he was being real tricky, real deceptive. And pretty much that's what gaslighting is all about, being deceptive with the other person that you're dealing with so that they lose confidence in their own decision making. And it gets so deep that they believe that they don't make good decisions. Gaslighting is when someone uses a series of manipulation and distraction tactics to get a person off balance, off base, and think that they are actually losing it and that they can't even depend on their own decision making. This is what happens in toxic relationships. The gaslighting partner, or the partner who's the gaslighter, if you will, is doing things little by little just to make that other person feel like, hey, is something wrong with me? Is something going on wrong? Maybe I'm not thinking clearly. They also do things like, say that something happened one way when clearly it happened another way. And that person believes that they have a bad memory at that point. Gaslighting is toxic. And it's something that should be avoided in all relationships. Pay attention to that. Gaslighting. Now, in gaslighting, even though the behaviors look the same, there are actually two types of gaslighters, if you will. There's that one gaslighter who's really probably not even aware that he or she is doing it. It's probably some type of behavior that they learned growing up in their family and their family dysfunction. But then there is that second gaslighter, that second one who enjoys bringing harm to the other person that they're involved with. Yes, it brings them pleasure to make that person feel like they can't depend on their own decision making or their own thoughts. That second gaslighter is the one we have to be careful of. I want to talk about the belittler. Yes, the belittler. That person who gives strong disapproval to another person they're in relationship with just to kind of throw them off base and make them question themselves. The belittler. That person who kind of like talks down, talks derogatory toward the other person in the relationship. Yeah, we're talking about that person. The belittler is one who condescends, makes fun of you, and they make you feel like your needs, your thoughts, your perceptions are all wrong and that there's something wrong with you for thinking that way. The belittler is that person who talks about you or says mean things in public, sometimes in front of your friends and your family. For them, they have no boundaries. They will belittle you or talk badly of you in any setting. The belittler. So the belittler is that person who says, I was just kidding, I'm just playing, but really they're not. Their goal is to make you feel bad about yourself. So number 3 is the bad temper, explosive tempered person that we can deal with in a toxic relationship. That person is the one who's easily triggered, or at least they behave as if they're easily triggered, because the goal in all of this is to control a person. So if I can use the fact that I'm easily triggered or have a bad temper as a way to control a person, then that's pretty much what they do. So when you're dealing with this bad tempered, explosive tempered person, it's usually you never are very successful at having an argument or a disagreement with that person. Yes, because they're always going to dominate the conversation or dominate the situation. And then if they can't dominate, then what they'll do is they'll ignore you, or they'll kind of treat you bad with that silent treatment. Yeah, and sometimes that's hard for people to deal with, is the silent treatment. It's the silence that sometimes gets us. So it's either they're popping off with the explosive behavior or attitude, or they're being silent. They're killing you with that silent treatment. So yes, the bad tempered, explosive tempered person, that is another characteristic of folks who are dealing with toxic situations. So when dealing with that person who has that explosive attitude behavior, you tend to feel like you're walking around on eggshells. Yeah, it can be a very intimidating type of situation dealing with a person like that. So outside, not in the house, but outside, that person seems so mellow, so kick back, so relaxed. People would never believe that you're going through what you're going through inside the house. And what they do is they control by intimidation. Yes, the hot, explosive, out of control, easily triggered person in a toxic relationship. So, number 4 is the user. Yes, the user. This is really one of the most common characteristics of a toxic relationship, is when you're dealing with a person who is considered to be a user. I mean, in the beginning of that relationship, yeah, they're nice, they're kind, they can even be generous sometimes. They're pleasant. They just seem like, they're the best person you ever met, loving you, being kind. And they will continue to do that as long as they're getting what they want from you. But as soon as you cut those purse strings, then things change. And the other thing about the user is that it's always a one-way type of relationship. It's always that one person giving, 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 rarely, if never, receiving anything back from that person. Yes, the user has that characteristic about themselves. And the other thing about the user is that you can never do enough. You can never do enough for the person who uses another person. Dealing with the person who uses you is like paying $1,000 for a candy bar. You know that candy bar is not worth it. Number 5, that excessively dependent person. Now, I'm not talking about the independent person who doesn't want, you to be around, or doesn't want you to depend on. I'm talking about the one who completely and ultimately depends on you. Right. This is the one who does not want to make any decisions about anything. And why? Why would you think? Why would a person want to be with someone, and they don't want to make any decisions? Well, I mean, think about it. I'm not responsible for anything that happens as a result of those decisions. So yeah, so this is another way of control as well, because when you are making all the decisions, like I said, you're responsible for everything that happens concerning those decisions. But not just that. Then that person can use some passive aggressive ways to make you feel guilty about your decision making. Yes, they'll use the silent treatment, or they'll just use a way of moping and complaining. That's their way of controlling. And it's also another way of getting you to second guess yourself when it comes to another decision. So yes, that person who is really kind of inappropriately dependent, yeah, that's the one. They don't want to make decisions because they don't want to be responsible. The next and last for today is number 6. It's that possessive, paranoid controller. Oh yeah, you know who that is. That's the one who wants to control all the narratives. And not do they just want to control all the narratives, but they want to control the person they're in the relationship with. So in the beginning of this relationship, oh, you're enjoying all this attention. Mm-hmm. You're enjoying having that person, just be so attentive. But little do you know that they are just getting you ready to be completely controlled. That's exactly what's happening. So this is the person who checks your car mileage to see how far you went. They're concerned about you being home 2 minutes late. They have a lot to say about the way you dress, who you talk to, when you talk to that person. I mean, your life becomes miserable because you are being completely controlled, consumed by this person. They start out real cute, real attentive, real loving, but it turns into something really ugly. All of these toxic behaviors, the main goal is control. Yes. Like I said before, we've all been in dysfunctional families, dysfunctional friendships, dysfunctional relationships where we're not functioning correctly or normally. And most times, if we work at that, we can control, we can change the narrative for that. But when you get into a toxic relationship, that's something different. Like we said, toxic means poison, it means deadly. So think about it. Being in a relationship that is poisonous, that can be deadly to you, to your health, to your well being, is not a good place to be. So we're going to end here, and next week I'm going to come back and we're going to talk more about these toxic relationships and what we can do to either heal them or end them. These are my 10-minute tips. You take care and you stay safe.